story about a mentally challenged teenager. She tells us her perspective in a school shooting. This is Special by Jake Barton. I'm so glad to be back at school again. This is where all my friends are. At school, my favorite time of day is lunch. I like lunchtime because it lets me and the other kids in my class see all the other kids at school. The kids at school can get really loud in the cafeteria. While we're waiting for our desserts, while we're eating our desserts, the other kids start coming into lunch. This girl named Sarah, who always sits next to me, waves to the kids waiting in the lunch line. When the kids see Sarah waving at them, they always say really loudly, "Hi, Sarah!" When we get back to class, our teacher, Mrs. Fletcher, always reads us a story. New stories are the best. Mrs. Fletcher always stops at different parts of the story, and she wants us to guess what we think is going to happen next. We almost always guess wrong, but once in a while, we're right. There was this one time Mrs. Fletcher said I couldn't guess what's going to happen anymore. I always make the story sound scary. They're all just a bunch of babies, except Anthony. He thinks my guesses would make the story sound better. Mrs. Fletcher said that I can't guess anymore because she's afraid the other kids in my class will have nightmares. And every day, after lunch, once we've heard our story, Mrs. Fletcher tells us that we have to take a nap for a little while. I don't think most of the kids in my class ever even take a nap. They just lay there and pretend to be asleep. Except Anthony, who's always picking his nose and wiping his boogers on his blanket. I told my mom what Anthony does, and she said I should tell Mrs. Fletcher. But I told Mom that I couldn't tell Anthony because he's my friend. So she said I should tell Mrs. Fletcher that we should have assigned blankets. So I told Mrs. Fletcher we should have assigned blankets, and she thought that was a good idea. So now we all have assigned blankets, and Anthony's blanket has lots of boogers on it. But that's okay. I'm just glad we're back at school again. We haven't gotten to come back to school in over a week, and it's not even a holiday. It's not Christmas, and it's not even spring break. I don't know why we got to stay home from school for so long. I just know that today is our first day back at school, and I'm glad to be here. It's not the same though. Today at lunch, it seems like there are a lot of kids absent. Maybe everyone got sick at the same time and got to stay home from school another day. And in the lunchroom, it wasn't noisy like it normally is. Sarah got upset because none of the other kids in school waved at her today while they were waiting in the lunch line. I told her that she shouldn't be upset. They probably just didn't notice her because they were all looking at the new tables, the new chairs, and the cool new flooring in the lunchroom. I told Sarah that everyone was probably being really quiet because there were a lot of adults. They were all standing around the cafeteria, leaning against the walls, and some of them were police officers and others were wearing suits. I think they might be there to talk about what they do for a living because every year we have grown-ups come to our school and tell us what we can do when we grow up. So we'll know what we want to be when we graduate from the high school and buy a house. Sarah said that made sense and it made her feel better because nobody waved at her today or said hello. After lunch today, some of the grown-ups came to our class and they wanted to know if we would talk to them. They were wearing suits and some of them were police officers. They wanted to ask us questions about the last day. They asked us about the boy who wears a long black coat. They wanted to know if any of us knew him. I raised my hand and I said I knew who he was because he always wears a long black coat. Then one of the ladies wearing a police officer uniform asked Mrs. Fletcher if she could talk to me in the office. Mrs. Fletcher said that would be fine and she told me it was okay to go with the lady. I didn't want to go with the lady. I didn't want to miss today's story. Mrs. Fletcher said she would wait to tell the story until I got back. That made me feel better because Mrs. Fletcher may have decided that I'd be the one who would guess what would come next. The police lady then walked me down to the office. She started asking me questions about the boy who wears a long black coat. She wanted to know if I knew his name. I told her no, because I just call him the boy who wears a long black coat. She wanted to know if I knew what happened that last day before we had that long break that wasn't even a holiday. I told her that we were all in the cafeteria and my classes were just starting to finish eating lunch. I told her about how the other kids were coming into the cafeteria and getting in the lunch line. We were waiting for Mrs. Fletcher to come get us. Usually Mrs. Fletcher comes to get us, but sometimes we have to walk back to class by ourselves. She wanted to know if I saw that boy who wears a long black coat that day, and I said yes. I told her that he came into the cafeteria while I was eating my dessert, and he looked like he was mad. He started pacing around the front of the cafeteria like he needed to go to the bathroom. Then he came near our table and told us to get back to our class, to get out of there. I told him that we had to wait for Mrs. Fletcher to come get us, but he said we needed to get out of there right now. I asked him why, and he said, because we're special. So we picked up all of our trays and threw away our trash. I started walking back to Mrs. Fletcher's room. That's when we started hearing him scream at the top of his lungs. I couldn't understand what he was saying, but he might have been screaming, "Food fight!" because right after he started yelling, everyone else in the cafeteria started screaming. Sarah said that she was scared, but Anthony and I told her that they were probably just throwing their rolls across the cafeteria. I saw that in a movie once, and I was so jealous. Who wouldn't want to throw a roll across the cafeteria? Then the lady wanted to know what else I heard. I told her it sounded like fireworks. And then I was really jealous because the only thing better than throwing rolls across the cafeteria would be to watch a fireworks show in the cafeteria. Loud noises made Sarah jump, but I told her that she shouldn't be afraid. They were probably just finished throwing their rolls and now were probably throwing their trays on the floor. Anthony agreed and said that if everyone was throwing their trays on the ground, that it would definitely sound like fireworks. The lady asked me if anyone told me anything else about the day. I told her no. But I thought that there must have been a tornado coming because Mrs. Fletcher was very upset. She said that we all had to get in the supply closet as fast as we could and we had to be very quiet. She told us to hurry and grab our blankets and get in the supply closet. She rushed us so fast that we didn't have time to grab our assigned blankets. We just had to grab one and get in the closet. Mrs. Fletcher told us to pretend that we were playing the quiet game, and whoever won a trip to Disneyland. We were all so quiet, you could hear everyone breathing. I definitely wanted to win a trip to Disneyland. Then I started worrying about whose blanket I grabbed. Finally, I started running my fingers all over the blanket, up, down, and all around. When I noticed how smooth our blanket was, I knew I hadn't grabbed Anthony's blanket, and that made me happy again. Finally, we got to leave the supply closet, and it was time to go home. Mom was there to pick me up, which was weird because I normally ride the bus home. I guess all the buses broke down that day. The nice police lady then walked me back to class. She asked me what I thought about the boy who wears a long black coat. I said I thought he was nice. She asked me why I thought he was nice, and I told her the truth. He was nice because he called me special.